Hi there. In lesson 5.2, we're going to look at how we can apply materials and assets into our 3D model, so we can put all the textures and materials and make it look nice. To help with this, I've gone and downloaded some materials from the asset store. We're not just going to use that; we're going to create our own as well. But I just wanted to show you both versions. So I'll just drag the asset store over here for a sec. So you can see these are some of my assets, and I've just searched for materials. I've got quite a lot of things here that I own, which are materials. It's pointing in the direction of things like Amplify Shader Editor. We talked about shaders and they're quite complicated to make. Well, this is the tool that makes them for you. You just use a configurator. It's well worth checking out. There's another one a bit like it. I can't remember its name now. Might see it in here. But what we're going to look at here is things like these PBR materials. PBR stands for physically based rendering. And anything like that's quite useful. So I've downloaded one of those packages ready to go in. Also just direct you to Substance in Unity. This is the plugin that allows you to bring in substances if you've been creating them or if you've downloaded them from CG Textures. So yeah, check out that as well if you're using Substance. So I've downloaded some PBR materials. I brought into my package manager. So it's PBR materials, wood and metal I've brought in, and it would have gone into there. So I'm just going to click and drag that into my third-party folder. So it's hidden away. And it comes with some sample scenes and things, which is always very nice. You know, if you want to check out how things are looking, it comes with some 3D models. But I've got my materials all in here. So here's some materials. Now you notice that they're all pink, and that's because we're using URP, and these were designed for something else. So I promised ages ago that I'll show you how to fix this pink. It keeps coming up. We're going to do it now. Now you can either do this by material, or you can do it for all of them. So if I selected, let's go into third-party PBR materials. Let's choose a wood material. Let's click on this one here, planks floor. I want to make this material work in URP mode. I have it selected. I go to Edit. I go to Render Pipeline. I go to Universal Render Pipeline and upgrade selected materials to Universal RP Materials. It then does a little bit of processing. Proceed, and there it's fixed it. It's converted it basically into URP lit. That's all it's doing. And now that works. It's not really the right one, but I click and drag that onto my floor here. A little bit of light on the system to see that. Why can't I see it? We'll have a look at that in a sec, why that's not working there, but let's try putting it on. There we go. Not very appropriate for the proscenium arch, but there we go. That's our material working there. But if you want to do it for all your materials, then you probably saw what you need to do as we were doing it just then. If you go to Edit, Render Pipeline, Universal Render Pipeline, rather than having something selected, just upgrade project materials. It's going to go through and find all the materials in your project and upgrade them all. It does take a little while, so I can do that. It's got 178 materials it's found. I've got a nice fast computer here, so it's done it quite quickly. And now you see that these other ones are also updated. Now these are really nice, these PBR materials. You say they've already come automatically with normal maps, height maps, occlusion maps. So they're pretty good. But what's happened when we've upgraded them is lost some of the other features that might control how it looks. So we might want to check things like the alpha levels and things, because they may have been appropriate in normal render mode, but maybe not in URP mode. So we'll discover those as we start to bring things together. I can look at the metal materials we've got here. What have we got? Materials. We've got a metal bare floor. We've got a coppery colour and a galvanised colour, so we could probably use those. And you can see it's coming with the textures as well. So these are the textures that go into making those models. So we can make our own materials if we wanted to using these textures. So you can see how they've been laid out. Metal bare 2, AL, albedo, AO for ambient occlusion, H for height, N for normal. And then we start the next one going with an ambient occlusion at the top. So there's lots of textures in there if we want to try and make our own. So let's start with the materials we need here. Let's have a look. So we've got a proscenium arch. I happen to know it's like a red velvety colour, this proscenium. I'm not going to do too much work on it. So I'm going to go into Content and Materials. This is where I've been creating my material so far. So I might just create a folder in here just to organise this a little bit. And I might call the first folder. It did that to me the other day, didn't it? It just decided not to make anything. Create folder. There we go. It takes 2 attempts. So I'm going to create one that's called Logos, because that's what these all are. And this one down the bottom here was something else, but I'll stick it in there just to hide it. And then I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Scenery. So it's really obvious now what I'm making. So I might just create a new material to start with. Go to Create by right-clicking in the window. and material. Now I'm going to give this a name, so I'm going to call it proscenium. Now, what would be quite sensible is to do like a suffix called mat, so we know it's material. There's a couple of good reasons for doing this, is that if you want to do a search later on, if you search for the word mat, it will bring up all your materials, but it knows it's a material. You can actually filter this by this little icon here, and say, I'm only going to see materials, and it just gives you all the materials in your project. And you can search for our packages, or you can search in the folder scenery we just had. So it doesn't really matter too much, but it's just a good habit to get into, to put in a suffix to show what it is that you've made. So we've got the proscenium material here, and I said it's slightly like a red colour, so I'm going to bring in a red. It's got metallic alpha applied. I don't know how that's going to look yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply it to my proscenium to start to see how it looks, so we can get a really good idea, from the scene's point of view. We've got all this weird post-processing going on at the moment, so let's just have a little play with the specularity. It doesn't need to be shiny, it's not made of plastic, it's a velvety colour, so we want it to be kind of soft. So we're going to just move that around a little bit. We might want to try putting in a normal map, something that gives it a bit of texture. Now we've got a load of normal maps in here because we've been importing other things, so there's quite a lot of very weird looking normal maps that might have nothing to do with it at all, but just looking, actually this elastic one looks quite good. See, it's quite a nice texture. It's just a little bit too big. That one just like flowers. And that one there, drywall plaster, might be quite appropriate. You can just sort of see what it's done there. It's put some lines on it. So we're going to go with that. That's quite nice. That just gives it a little more information that we could pick up. So there we go. Let's get rid of that. Now, this fog thing that's really bothering us, let's fix that now. Let's go to the post-process volume. That's where this is all happening. This is basically because of the size of the camera. It might be the scene's physically too big still. So we'll have a look at that in a moment and see if it's all of the right scale. And it could be that we're just looking so far in the distance, it's created a natural fog. So let's just have a look at what we've got here. We've got the volume, we've got tone mapping, we've got bloom, and we've got a vignette. So let's try playing with some of these to see if we can get rid of some of the things happening. The vignette is around the outside. It just makes the camera look quite pretty. It's quite a nice effect. It's very filmic. It's very good for VR and AR, just to sort of blend the edges slightly so you don't get such a hard edge, particularly with smart glasses. What about bloom? What's happening with bloom? Let's try turning off the threshold intensity. No, that's not fixed it. Let's try looking at tone mapping. No, it's not doing it there either. So it must be up here in volume. Let's try making that local rather than global. No, that's not fixed it either. Profile, let's try changing that. No, we've only got the one profile. So it's not doing that. So that probably means it's the wrong scale. It probably means that we're dealing with something that's too big. And so it feels like it's looking at the distance. And this is the idea is in computer games, things that are far away get like a sort of foggy haze to make them feel further away, which is part of your environment settings. But it is a warning as well that maybe we've built something that's too big. So let's try something else. Let's create in our content folder, we're going to create a reference to try and check what the size of our scenery should really be. And we should have done this in the last lesson, really. I'm going to go back to my folder with all of my content in it. I'm not going to show you my folder structure though, in case there's anything sensitive in it. And I'm going to bring in a PDF. So if I go to my where is it? Set. I've got a set plan PDF. Let's bring that up. So there you go. That's a set plan. And on here's a measurement. It says 16.46 meters between the ends of that first border. So that's a reference. We can use that. So I have actually already turned this this PDF into a JPEG, so I can import it. I need to remember where I saved it though. So we're going to bring that in, and it might be in my pictures folder. Let's just have a look. There it is. So I'm going to click and drag in this JPEG, which is a picture from that PDF, and we're going to create a plane on the floor. And let's just drag it out of the way. Eventually we want to put this on 0, 0, 0. But for now we're just going to move it out of the way just so we can get it set up. And I'm going to put this texture on it. It's going to create a material, and it's a bit dark. So in fact what I'm going to do is in that material I'm also going to apply the same image to my emissive map, just make it glow really brightly. Here's my emission map, so that's nice and bright. And it's also the long way around, so I'm just going to spin it. So in the press E for rotate, and make that -90. Now you'll notice first of all, my image was landscape, but this is a square plane, so it's affected the aspect ratio. So we have to fix that. Now on my, if you're using Windows, on my settings, I can go and have a look at the details of this image that I've just imported. So in details here, it tells me what the pixel resolution is. So width is 2339 and the height is 3309. It's actually for us the other way around because we spun it around. So we want the height, or the bottom of it, to be the equivalent of the aspect of 3.3 versus 2.3. So I'm going to start with that in meters, and we're going to see where it lands. And then what we're going to do is create a reference to line it all up. So let's go 3.3 and 2.3 meters across. So that means that the X will be 3.3. No, other way around. That'll be 2.3. And our Z will be 3.3. There we go. Now that's the correct ratio. Let's just sort that out. Okay. Now we're going to create a reference for this border here to see if it's actually the right size, because we don't know at the moment if anything's at the right scale. So we go back to that PDF. And just remind ourselves of the dimension. It's 16.46 meters. So we're going to create a cube. And in Unity, 16.46 is meters. It's not centimeters or millimeters. Or 1 is 1 meter. So I'm going to make the Z-axis 16.46. That's the scale. I don't know, where is it? Where is it? It's down there. I didn't mean it. The Z, did I? I meant the X. So get it right, James. There we go. So where is that? It's gone down there. So let's bring that up. And let's line it up with that border. And what we could help actually is to make it a little bit thinner. So let's make it 0.2 by 0.2. So we've got like a little bar. And we know this is the right width. So look, there we go. The plan is almost the right size, but it's a little bit too big. So let's make that smaller. And this is where your ISO mode helps actually. Stick this in ISO. You look from above. You now lose the perspective, so there's no chance of you seeing things out of place. If you're looking straight down at something, if it's blocking it, then it actually is in the right place. Whereas before I was looking at it and I was seeing perspective because there was a bit of a gap between the object I was using as a reference and the plan. So as I was looking at it, it was appearing smaller. So it's good to check. So scale it uniformly. Try not to do it like this, because that will change your aspect, and we've just worked that out. So we don't want that to go wrong. So I'll keep making it smaller and just dragging it over until that is the same size. We're nearly there. A little bit bigger again. Maybe a little bit smaller again. And you can see this isn't terribly accurate. I mean, the idea is that you do this all accurately in 3D Max, but we're checking everything. So I'm happy that I've now got that to the right size. So it actually wasn't the 3.3 I did originally. It's actually 1.88 by 2.7. That's to get it to be the right scale for this. So let's put that back at 0, 0, 0. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my reference cube. Don't need that anymore. And now this is where it's useful having everything grouped together into this 3D stage, because now I can move the whole lot so it's in the right place on the plan. So it's there. There we go. So actually we were the right size the whole time. So that's not explaining the fog either. So I'll tell you what, I promise I'll fix the fog later. I'll have to do some research what's causing that. There is a post-processing volume, or there's an environment setting somewhere that I need to fix. And now we've bothered to do this reference plane, which is really helpful. We want to keep it, so I'm going to call this reference plane. And I'm just going to turn it off by unticking the checkbox here. There we go. And now it's just out of the way. So that's useful to have just for the future. And if you wanted to, you can now bring in other images from your set plans. Now you've got the aspect ratio right, and we checked it's the right size. Just keep bringing in those PDFs as JPEGs, and they'll just go over the top quite accurately. So let's carry on with our materials. Now the stage and the fourth stage, they can just be a plain black. So let's go back into our materials objects here. I've got scenery, proscenium for matte, and now I'm going to do create a material by right-clicking in the project window. Create material, and I'm going to call that floor underscore matte. This is going to be black, nice and simple. Okay. Now actually, it's recommended not to go completely black. Just want a little bit of grey. So you see that this is at 255. Let's just put that up a little bit. So we've got it maybe 10% each, or 10 bits of of data each for red, green, and blue, just so it's slightly off black. There's a reason for this. Black's just so deep it would not reflect light, which isn't how it works in the real world. Light will always reflect. Blacks aren't really black, so it's quite a good idea not to have things totally black. However, we don't want all that shininess, so let's get rid of that. Let's bring down metallic alpha to 0. If we do this one here, it might just add a little bit of smoothness around the outside, just make it look neater. We could try changing the workflow from metallic to specular, but it doesn't really change the reflections. So I'm going to drag that in onto the floor there, onto the floor stage, and drag it onto the stage. And they're already black in the first place. We can't really see a big change. However, we now have them linked to our floor mat material. So if we update the floor material later, say we want to add wood to it or something, we'd see it change here. Now the show floor. The show floor is slightly different. It's a slightly it's a textured black. It looks like wood. So what we're going to do here is we're going to find one of our third-party wood materials that we just brought in, and we've got wood rough, wood reinforced, and wooden planks. Now none of these are what we need. They all look different, but that's fine. We're going to copy one. So we're going to Control C, and if I can use my little gizmo here to get onto the correct folder. Where am I? Content, third party. I want content, materials, scenery. Control V. No, it didn't work. I didn't think it was going to. That's why I was moving around in this folder here. Let's go back to my wood materials. I'm just going to copy it across by moving it. So I'm going to click and drag this using this folder on the left. I think I was wishing and praying that was going to work the way I thought it was going to. Click and drag that into scenery. It's moved it, so it's taken the actual material over. Oh, where have I gone? Content, scenery. And I've now got this wooden floor and plank material. So I'm just going to click and drag this on actually so we can see it. Now, it's way too big. Yeah, it's taken the whole material. The wood planks aren't that big, and it's the wrong colour. In fact, let's just put some more light on the stage. That might help with the trouble we're having seeing things. Another directional light. Let's spin that around. There we go. That's looking better, isn't it? In fact, what we can do, we can turn off shadows. No shadows. And now, as I said to you in one of those earlier lessons, it just lights everything uniformly. So that's better. So now we can see what that texture's doing. And it's not really right, is it? So let's click on this one here. And we're going to make some changes to it. First of all, we're going to tile it. So this is when you've got a texture that's been built to be tiled. It means it's got the identical edges on each edge, so that if you duplicate it next to itself, it will blend in nicely. So the bottom edge of the bottom edge of the image is the same as the top edge of the image. So they merge together, and that's something you can do in Photoshop. And there's some good tutorials out there teaching how to do that. So let's start by doing 4x4. Oh, that didn't work at all. Let's try this one here. 4x4. There we go. That's the tiling of the mask, not the actual object. So that's made it a bit smaller, but still a bit too big. Let's try 8x8. Now you see the danger of getting too detailed with the tiles is that you do get a nice smaller image, and it doesn't cost much more in terms of processing to have a detailed image like this. You're taking 512 or 512 bytes of data from textures, and when you get really close, that detail's preserved, and because you're just tiling it, the computer's just reprocessing that without having to do much work. So it's a very efficient way of getting your textures to have lots of detail. But you can see there's a pattern there. There's like this brown splodge, which is correcting itself in each version of the tile, which makes it look really obvious that it's tiled. Some things you can do to fix that is you might be able to try going a little bit odd in the aspect, so you make it slightly slanted. Let's try 4x4. Isn't so bad, but it's still obvious that you've got the detail. And now we've gone too big again. So let's go 6x6, and then we're going to see how it looks once we change the colour, because we want it to be a little bit darker. It's meant to be black wood. So let's take the base map here. If I click on this box, I can change the colours whatever I want. So I'm going to make it blacker, but not completely black, as I said before. So it's very, very dark, but that will pick up light. So if I bring in a light, let's see how that looks and see if we want to do more to it. Let's pull that out. See, it's creating a light there. There we go. So it is picking up light. If we make that intensity a little bit higher. But you see, if I bring that over on top of the stairs, which have a different material, you see how much more bright it is. So maybe we want to go a little bit brighter than that with this material, because otherwise lights aren't going to show up. So let's try slightly grey like that. And it is good. You can't really see the the repetition in the tiling so much anymore. That's helped. We could try changing around some of our specularities here to make it shiny, like giving it a shiny edge. All the bump maps now around the edge showing up. It looks watery, doesn't it? So that's a nice effect. You hear my graphics card whizzing around as I'm trying to process that. So you can see the bump map really working. All these little details or little textures, that's this bump map, and we can change that with this height map button here. Looks freaky like water's running down there. But we don't want a lot of water, so let's take that out, and it starts to look dry again. So yeah, if you're wondering what all those specular maps are for, now you're starting to get an idea. You can see how it's going to work. The occlusion map's the same. You've got little shadows in there. You just see those shadows picking up. Like if you look at that little dot there, it's like a little lump. The occlusion map's trying to process where there might be some shadows. So this is where PBR materials are really exciting. You can have quite a lot of fun with them. So I'm going to go with that because it's given it a nice texture, so we can see. Now, you've probably got an exact texture bit you want to use for your show. So if you've got an artwork that goes across that whole diamond or the triangle, bring that in as one big piece. Make it high enough resolution that it covers the whole thing. This is probably one of those times when you can let an asset get too big. Now we've got my stairs. Now my stairs are actually made up of two different components. This is where it actually would have been useful if I'd separated these out before I brought them in. So rather than having one big object, but I can still get to the submaterials. So I've kind of got this railing and all the metalwork underneath, which is black metal, and then I've got black painted wood on top. So black painted wood, we have a material for that now. We're going to use this one. There we go. And it's just copied that across. We don't need to tile it. It's gone in quite small. If you were doing this properly, you'd try to make it look like your reference material, or how a designer wanted it. But because we don't have one of those, we're just going to pretend that's what the designer intended. And now for the metalwork, we're going to do the same thing again that we did for the wood. We're going to go and find third-party material, PBR material, metal materials, and we've got three materials. We've got metal bare, metal floor, metal galvanized. Now, I quite like this because it's got that sort of texture pattern that you might get on the that metal flooring you used to see quite a lot in the 80s. It's like got patterns built into it so you don't slip over. So I'm going to drag that over into my materials folder, scenery. Let's go back to there. Oh, no, wrong one again. Content, materials, scenery, and metal floor there. Now it's kind of a bronzy color. Now I could, find this base map. It's there. I could take that into Photoshop and change the color over there. That'd be quite good. And you can see it's exactly what I was trying to describe. It's that metal with the pattern in it, which is brilliant. But it's quite rusty. We don't want rust. We want it to be we want it to be black, like it's just been painted, because it's this is theatre after all. So we're going to go back to the metal floor, and we're just going to adjust it in here. So this is a bit of a cheat, you see. Like I can make it a deeper red, but just making it black there sort of works. And this is one time specularity goes in our favour because it's making it shiny. So let's click and drag that into that. Now I know that this metal would normally be used for flooring, but you can see here that because this object hasn't been UV mapped very well, and I say that I did it. I know it wasn't UV mapped at all because we didn't need to. You can see how the texture is being manipulated. Up here, we're not seeing the pattern at all because it's just been spread all over. Here, we've got something that was a cube at one point, and that's just taking it, stretching it out and sort of treating it as a cube. The whole model was actually just a CAD drawing, so it's never been. It went into 3D Max and got exported from there, but it's never been set up to be a game object. So this was literally 3D CAD into 3D Max and then exported as an FBX. So no treatment at all. So you can see just actually without having to know 3D modeling, you can do quite a lot. So we can repeat that for all of these. We're just going to select all the objects. That might be easier to do them one at a time. So we're going to drag wood planks floor onto there. Can I get a way of doing this without? Yeah, there we go. So I have to select them each time. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing for all of these. I don't know why I highlight it. It's obviously a hang up from some modeling program that I used to use quite a lot where you have to select things. I don't know if you can hear it, but my graphics card has a little whiz every time I I'll move that around because it's trying to process in real time all the data. And it's starting to get a little bit heavier now because we've got materials and lights and all sorts of things happening at the same time. Still nowhere near, you know, a full computer game for processing. Still quite a lightweight project this. Right, and a wood planks floor. There we go. And the same back here as well. So we're going to put the wood planks floor on the top here. Ooh, there we go. Ah, right. Now I've seemed to have got that all as one great big piece. So all of that stuff at the front is also the top. So I'm going to cheat now, just because this video is starting to get long already. I'm just going to bring this all in as the matte floor. So it's all metal. So the metal at the top as well. I don't really want that. I want to try and keep it the same as the steps. But for the sake of just getting on and getting it done now, I'm interpreting this design in new ways. Because I'm sure this is boring for you. Right, nearly there. There's a few bits around the back which I'll do later, but there you go, you get the idea. Now, all of these panels here, they're all individual. Now they're going to become emissive materials. We're going to have some fun of those because then we can make them pop out. They're actually LED tiles on stage, just single channel or 3-channel RGB. So there's not like a video wall, but each one of those glows in 3 colors. So I'm going to create 3 different materials, and I'm going to call them panel red _ matte. In fact, if I'm going to do this right, I don't put the underscore there. I'll do the camel hump lettering that I told you about before. So panel capital red _ matte. And I'm going to do, in fact, no, I'm going to do that one first, and then I'm going to copy them a bit. So base map, I'm going to make that red, and my emissive map, I haven't got a matte to put in, I'm just going to make that red as well so it's glowing. And let's stick that on one of the panels, see how that looks. See, it's giving us a nice little bit of glow, but I think it could be a little bit more. So let's just up that a little bit so it looks like it's glowing. There we go. I've now got an illuminated panel. It does go a little bit orangey though when it's processing it. Create another one, material. I could do this for all the colours that you might want, but just again for time, I'm just going to make 3. I'm just going to red, green, blue. So you've got green there. I'm going to make that green by selecting on the colour picker. I'm going to make my emissive map green. Remember to tick that box to say that you want to use the emissive map. I don't know why you need to. Oh, and I click this up 2 points. It starts to go a bit yellow as it gets brighter. So let's bring the green one in. And let's do create material. Haven't named it. Panel. Oh no, blue. I'm doing yellow. It's because I was getting fixated on my green turning yellow. Right, again, let's go to blue, nice deep blue. So I'm just really guessing these. You can spend a lot of time finessing this if you're a good designer. Oh, and let's knock up the intensity a couple of notches and bring that in. There we go. In fact, that one could probably go up a little more, couldn't it? Because blue's quite dark. It's like a little bit purple now. And you can see how much fun we're going to have with those. Now, yeah, so there's a problem with this. At the moment, those are fixed colours because I fixed them in here. There is ways of programming in a colour picker or something if you wanted to have them all individually changeable. You could create an animation that changes colour. So you could have maybe 3 materials that start red, green and blue each and then cycle in order so you get a nice rainbow chase across all 3. There's lots of things you could do to make that more dynamic. But if you're doing a visualisation just trying to demonstrate an idea, this is probably the quickest and easiest way of doing it. Obviously, what you want to be able to do is get a lighting desk to control it. And there are ways to do that. I'll do that in a completely different lesson. And frankly, if you're going to do that, then what you really want is Unreal Engine and our plugin from Copper Candle, which can manage that for you. So I'm probably not going to tell you much about that because I'd rather you came and looked at our plugin, which is really designed for exactly that. So that is that. Let's just do a couple more of these. So we've got masking. Now the masking is going to be a bit like the velvet we've done for the proscenium arch, except it'd be black. So the proscenium arch I put in this map here. Now if I right click on this, I can go, where's it going to let me do it? No, I have to go to edit, copy, and then edit again and paste. It does make copying and pasting really hard. Yeah, it's not going to let me do it. It's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And what you really want is duplicate button. Is a duplicate button working? There we go, duplicate. See, why not copy and paste? It's mad. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we're going to change the name of this to masking. In fact, I'm going to call it black masking, just in case you have anything else. And I don't want that one in there, so let's get rid of that. Let's keep it all nice and neat, shall we? And rather than red, I'm going to make it black. But you see, it's already left in there the normal map I had before and all the settings. So it should behave the same way as the red at the front. So I'm just going to click and drag that in. And these were a bit more UV mapped because they came from another software. You built them in 3D Max, so they it gets turned into boxes. And I'm just going to use that for the background as well because it sort of works. So it's starting to look a bit nicer now, isn't it? So there's a few more things that need doing. There's the back of this pyramid. That I'm going to make a plain metal material. It's not actually how it was on the show, but just to make the point. Third-party materials, PBR materials, metal, and I've got two here, haven't I? I've got metal bare and metal galvanized. I'm going to go with metal galvanized. That looks quite nice. So let's bring that in. Oh, and I think it's going to need tiling because there's no UV map on that. So let's try tiling this to make it look a bit neater. Just drag these up and down. If you didn't know, if you just wondered what I was doing now, click and drag on the X and the Y just is a way of sliding things around. So that's a bit nicer, isn't it? And you can see here the texture map is so detailed, but it's not really applying that to the model here. So the UV map's so wide that we need this much detail. It's probably just looking at this very, very smallest bit in this corner here. So you know, we probably can't use that material for anything else now. We'd have to duplicate it and rebuild it because that's so detailed. If I, for instance, try to drag that into like the stairs there, you can see what it's done. Oh, let's get closer so we can see. It's created a really horrible map because that tiling has been designed for something else. It's not really worked here. And this is where getting UV maps built in the 3D modeling program are essential. But this is the quick and dirty approach to getting visualizations ready in Unity for theatre. So quick and dirty is what you get. Right, so everything else I'm going to do offline, just so I'm not wasting your time. It's pretty much all there. I'm going to figure out why this fog's happening. I've lost track of why that is. I'm going to add some more of these LED squares onto the wall at the back and also onto the door here. They should have the same. It might end up being all of the same colour because they come in as a block. And just finish applying all the metal, all the materials to the metalwork as well. And then you're starting to see how that's coming together. And then the next lesson, we are going to start looking at animating some movement. So we're going to have a look at the animation timeline and just get those treads to slide backwards and forwards, just something really simple, just so we can start to see how movement might work. And that'll be useful in the theatre context. Okay, see you in the next lesson.